Hey y'all, it's Jeff here. We're going to do this episode a little bit differently. Typically, if you're used to listening to the podcast, what I do is I do like an intro where I get all the business stuff out of the way, and then I go to the actual talk. But today is just a solo episode, it's just me. So I thought I'd just do the intro and then talk together. And part of the reason that is because I was talking to Laura this week, who's my partner in a lot of things. You've probably heard her on Q&A episodes if you've listened for a while, or if you hang around the Dialogue Doctor community, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. You've definitely met her there because she co-runs that stuff with me. So I was talking to Laura this week, and we have a big course coming up. And she was like, why aren't you pumping the course on the podcast? I was like, oh my gosh, I spent like 10 minutes pumping the course like a podcast. What are you talking about? She's like, no, I watch it every week and you didn't do it. And so I had a panic. I was like, oh my gosh, did I forget to pump the course on the podcast? Oh no, that's terrible. And I listened real quick. I was like, no, it's there. I was like, so what are you talking about? And she was like, oh, I only watch YouTube. And she's right. The announcements don't show up on YouTube because I am not skilled enough yet at this. I mean, we're like 40 something episodes in. I'm not skilled enough yet at this to edit video. So YouTube just gets the lesson. They don't get the like preamble where I talk about life and I talk about what I'm experiencing. And then I'm talking about like all the things going on in Dialogue Doctor World. They don't get any of that. So YouTube listeners, today for you, because Laura pointed out to me, and because this is a solo episode and I can without having to edit video, which is something I haven't taught myself how to do yet, I'm just going to do the announcements like I always do, the like preamble to the lesson, and then we'll go right into the lesson. And I'd like to say I'm going to have some kind of smooth transition from the preamble into the lesson, like something fancy, but I'm not. We're just going to move one thing to the other. So let's talk about what's happening this week in the Dialogue Doctor experience. Now, the first thing is if this is the first time you're listening to this, or if you're watching on YouTube, because I've never talked about this on YouTube before, you're probably wondering what the Dialogue Doctor experience is. So the Dialogue Doctor experience is there's three things that happen during the week. The first thing that happens is this podcast / YouTube video. It comes out early Monday morning. You know, again, if this is your first time listening, every other episode, I try to work with an individual person so you can kind of see us working in dialogue on action. Sorry, you can see us working on dialogue in action. Oh my gosh. You can see dialogue in action. You can see us working. I don't know how to say that. You can see me working with somebody on dialogue because I think a lot of times it helps. I know I get a lot watching two people work on something together. So we have authors on, we work on their stuff together. And then every other course we have kind of a different episode where I'm either talking to somebody about something, we're doing a Q&A with Laura, we're breaking down a movie, or occasionally I do solo episodes like this one. I actually think I've only done one solo episode before, not counting the very first episode, which we don't talk about. This I did it sometime in the 20s, maybe 24, I don't remember. I talked about the Dialogue Daisy. So if you haven't watched that one, you may want to watch that one before you watch / listen to this one. It's just the episode's titled Dialogue Daisy. If I were smart and knew what I was doing, I would have had that episode number ready for you, but I don't. It's somewhere in the 20s. That's super helpful, I know. So Dialogue Doctor experience, stay on point. This is why I don't do solo episodes. So Dialogue Doctor experience. First thing that happens is Monday, super early in the morning for me, because I set it to come out at like midnight on Monday morning. The podcast / YouTube episode comes out. After that happens, Tuesday morning, there's a newsletter that comes out. You can subscribe to the newsletter by going to dialoguedoctor.com. It's totally free. What happens in the newsletter is I break down something a little bit further that, something I talked about in the podcast that I feel like, man, that could have used a little more info. So I break it down a little bit further in the newsletter. A lot of times it's short. It's like 500 to 700 words. This week in the newsletter, I'm actually going to share the chart with anybody that is part of the newsletter. I'm going to show them a copy of the chart, and then I'm going to go step by step how I use it for a scene. All of that will make sense after we talk about modulating voices. But just know that there's just things I can't hand you in the in the YouTube. Take it. There's things I can't hand you in the YouTube or the podcast. So I get to email that to you. if you're subscribed to the newsletter. So go subscribe to the newsletter, dialoguedoctor.com. It's free, and you get a free like workbook with it that will help you start breaking down some problems with dialogue right away. So that's the first thing, is the podcast / YouTube video. The second thing is the Tuesday morning newsletter. And then Tuesday afternoon, if you're a Patreon subscriber, so for $3 a month, you get this Patreon subscription, you get this bonus episode. And the bonus episode is me breaking down something even further. So in this week's bonus episode, I'm going to talk about how I use colors to help myself figure out the emotional tone of a piece, or really the emotional tone of a character. So anyway, all that to say, that'll be the bonus episode. I'm not going to put that in this one. But if you go to patreon.com / Jeff Elkins, or you can go to dialoguedoctor.com and find the Patreon page there. You can subscribe for $3 a month, and every week you get a bonus episode. It's usually 20 to 30 minutes long. It comes on Tuesday afternoon. You can listen to it whenever you want, though. And it's solo episodes just like this one. It's just me doing a solo episode. And typically I'm breaking down something about dialogue, something I've learned that week, a question I've been getting with a lot of clients that I've worked with, something that's occurred to me, or something that I'm working on. A lot of times I'll process things I'm working on in those solo episodes, not like my own work, but meaning like, hey, this is something I'm trying to figure out about dialogue. So let's just talk through it in the solo episode. Solo episodes get a lot of bonus episodes get a lot of comments. So I tend to interact with people in the comments on those. Then the best part of the bonus episode is that if you subscribe for $3 a month on Patreon, you also get to be part of our Slack channel. The Slack channel is fantastic. We put out a writing prompt every Tuesday, and then Laura puts out an editing prompt on Thursday, which I think is the most brilliant thing in the world. It was her idea, and it's great. So we put out the writing prompt. The writing prompt always is something that's going to push you to write better dialogue, because the idea of the writing prompt isn't just to give you creative ideas, but to like actually work your craft. So the writing prompt is going to push you to write better dialogue. It's always like, hey, I'll give you the one coming up this week is, so I'm still kind of working on it, but it's going to be something like, you have two characters and they're having a miscommunication, because we've had some really serious writing prompts of like emotionally heavy stuff. So we want to do a light thing. And the idea is like, make the miscommunication funny. So we want a comedic miscommunication between two characters. That's the kind of, and we encourage everybody to write dialogue only rough drafts. And if you're in the Slack, you learn what a dialogue only rough draft is. So that's the Slack, $3 a month gets you a part of that. And then Laura reads everybody's stuff, and based on what everybody wrote, she gives an editing prompt. Like, hey, here's what I want everybody to work on in their pieces. When you're doing this shift in your character's voice, like, everybody try to edit it this way, and then everybody edits and reposts their work. So it's a fun community. We also just talk about crap and chat about things. We have a monthly Zoom call, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the third leg of the Dialogue Doctor experience. First leg is this podcast or video. Second leg is the newsletter, dialoguedoctor.com. Third leg is the Patreon, which is a little step further. Like, that's for the people who are real dialogue fanatics like myself. Dialogue fanatics like myself. Can't pronounce that today. So that's the Dialogue Doctor experience. And then if you subscribe to the bonus episode, you get in the Slack channel too. All right. That's the first thing I wanted to tell you about. Dialogue Doctor experience, sign up for it. Second thing I wanted to tell you about is we have a book club going. And about every 3 months, we are reading a book together. The idea behind the book is not that we're just, randomly reading books, although all writers should be reading. But that we're reading books that we feel have really great dialogue, so that we can see what that author's doing, so we can learn from it. And this is our book club, right? Like, it's not just my book club, it's for all the Dialogue Doctor fanatics, right? It's for all dialogue fanatics. So if you want to be a part of that, go to dialoguedoctor.com. There's a little thing that'll pop up that says contact me. I do read those and write back to them. I had one of those popped up, and then someone was like, is this a bot? I was like, no, it's not a bot. Then I was immediately like, but that's exactly what a bot would say. And I got trapped in this weird wormhole where I'm like, I don't know what to say to make you think I'm not a bot. Anyway, it's not a bot, it's me. So you can just hit me up on the little chat thing on dialoguedoctor.com and tell me like, hey, I want to be a part of the book club. We're going to audio record it here in about 3 weeks. So you have time to get the book and read it. My only requirement for coming to the book club is that you've read the book. that's actually a necessity. You have to have read the book. So the book we're doing this time is Borrowed Time by Tracy Clark. Uh, it's a mystery novel out of Chicago. This was Laura's pick. She got mad at me because I was picking very heavy things. As I tend to do, I was picking. We did Beloved by Toni Morrison. We did The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway, and then I started joking about Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, which is like 1,000 pages and has a very random plot that was evidently plotted according to a mathematical equation. And Laura was like, no, we're not doing any of that. We're doing something fun. So she picked Borrowed Time by Tracy Clark, and I'm loving it. I'm reading it now. It's really fantastic. So if you want to be part of the book club, go to dialoguedoctor.com, sign up for the book club. It's great. All right. Third thing I wanted to talk to you about. Laura and I have found that we really love coaching. Right. The reason that I've fallen into this and have been doing it, so successfully is that this is helping writers with their work. I've been surprised. It's something I really love. I really love sitting with writers and helping them. And we can only do so many one-on-one sessions. So, and in a one-on-one session, we're really focused on like your work individually, like the issues in the piece that you sent us. We try to expound those to like, hey, you can work on this and build this out, but we're really focused on like the issues that you sent us. So, all that to say, we're going to host a master class, kind of mastermind course, and it's going to be 10 weeks long. We're going to take 8 students. And what we're going to do for this one is we're going to take these 8 students through a character chart in a way that teaches you how to build a cast of characters and design voices. Right. So our goal is that when you've walked away from the 10 weeks with us, you're going to be able to design these voices without really without any help from us. The goal is to like set you up with all the tools we use and teach you all every just bestow on you our dialogue, character voice knowledge as much as we can, and really just help process through your cast. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what a voice is. We're going to talk about how we make the transition from a personality to a voice, which is so hard, right? Like that transition from like knowing someone is shy and then to figuring out what a shy person sounds like, right? Like, so that move from, and not just what a shy person like in general sounds like, but like what this specific shy person sounds like. How is this character's shyness expressed? So we're going to walk you through like how to do that, how to make that move from personality to character voice. That'll be 1 week. 1 week, we're going to talk about writing your protagonist and creating a voice that naturally lends to the plot you want to write. And then 1 week, we're going to talk about building allies around your protagonist to encourage that plot, like whatever it is the character's transforming to, how to build allies that encourage that. We're going to talk about building an antagonist that challenges that, right? Like, so yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to build a whole cast of characters, and by the time you're done, you're going to have a full cast of characters. So if you're editing a book, this will be great for you because you're going to get all the character voices to edit. Or if you're getting ready to write a book, this is going to be fantastic for you because we're going to write each week, and you're really going to be able to write out the character voices, and you're going to have Laura and I there coaching. And everybody's going to get their cast of characters looked at and coached over. Man, that was super unprofessional. My phone is like going off and I should turn that off. Excuse me. Everyone's going to get their cast of characters looked at and like examined and analyzed. Yeah, it's going to be fun. So go to dialoguedoctor.com, click on the courses button, and there's a big description there of what's going on. If it interests you, grab the application at the end and fill it out. Again, we're only taking 8 students. So yeah, that'll be great. So that's the Dialogue Doctor experience. Go sign up for the newsletter, get on the Patreon so you can get in the Slack group and be a part of the Dialogue Doctor community, which is fun. The book club is coming up, Borrowed Time by Tracy Clark. Make sure you grab that and read it so that you'll understand our conversation when we have it in May. And if you want to be a part of that conversation, you can totally just jump in with us. I'll tell you when we're going to video that. We just used a Zoom call to do it. So yeah, you can jump in and we can all talk about Tracy Clark's fantastic book, Borrowed Time. And then the last thing is the course is coming up. So, and we're going to make decisions about the course at the end of this week. So yeah, go sign up for the course. Go apply for the course, and then we'll make decisions at the end of this week. Whew, okay, that's a lot of stuff. I'm going to take a drink of coffee. I and while I drink coffee, I'm just going to pause for a minute. And give a reflection, because this seems to be a weekly thing I do, whether it's not planned, but I always just end up babbling. Not on the YouTube channel though, just on the podcast. So um, I struggle a lot uh, with my sometimes lack of professionalism. Um, I mean, look at this room I'm sitting in. I talked to Sasha Black a couple times, and I've been on phone calls with her. She does the Rebel Author podcast. I'm a huge fan of hers, and she's super impressive. And she has a wall of books behind her that's color coded, and I love it so much. And I'm like, man, Sasha is an uber professional. Or I get to talk to Jay Thorne every once in a while. And Jay is a super professional, right? Like he's in this really nice space, and he knows what he's doing when it comes to recording, and he edits stuff really well. And you know, I'm here in my basement. My kids' COVID desks are behind me because this is COVID, y'all. And my kids have been homeschooling, not homeschool, they're in public school, but our schools have been closed for a year. They just opened last week. Um, and so my kids have been behind me. If we were doing this interview, if we were having this conversation like 6 hours earlier, you'd see them back there goofing around. I can't tell you how many calls I'm on where my kids are like in school behind me. It's crazy. Um, yeah, and so I think it's easy for me, and I'm talking to authors right now who are like me that aren't full-time authors, right? Who hold down jobs and do this, are like hustling, right? Like this is a side hustle. This has been a side hustle for me for 6 years. Uh, so yeah, there's that level of professionalism I can never seem to go for. I mean, crap. Look, if you're watching on YouTube, my headphones broke this week, so they're duct taped, because that's how we roll. But yeah, all that to say, like, I think I have an expectation um, that I'm going to be this uber professional. And I'm going to keep up with real pros like Jay and Sasha. Um, And it really played out this week. I put a book up on Kobo, and I'm advertising my books for the first time this year in a disciplined manner. And I'm trying to do at least one advertisement a week. I've got 12 books on the market. I've never advertised them, not real strategically, right? Like every once in a while, I'll be like, I'm going to try a Facebook ad, and I'll do it for like a month. And I'll be like, that was fun, and I'll turn it off. Part of that's financial, right? Like I've never had the resources to do it, but right now I have, my wife and I have been really blessed recently. She started working a year ago, and so we have a little extra cash, and so it's like, okay, I can actually put some money into this business I'm trying to build. um, and so I I put a book up on Kobo this week, and I don't know what I did. um, but I put the book up on Kobo, and I got they selected me for one of their free deals. So I put the book up for free, and I was so excited. I ran a Facebook ad alongside the free deal, and like 900 people downloaded the book. I was so pumped. It's the most people that have downloaded that book in a week. And it's a great book. I love it. It's one of my favorite books that I've written. I was so excited that so many people were going to jump into it. And then there's someone left a comment that was like, hey, whoever formatted this book, the chapters are wrong. Oh. And I was like, I know I checked it. Maybe I didn't. I don't even remember. I work a full-time job, and I have 5 kids, and I was putting it up at like midnight, I think, just trying to get it done. And so, there's like 900 people that downloaded an effed up book from me, and that sucks. Uh, and yeah, when that kind of stuff happens, I start getting really down on myself, and I'm like, should I even be doing this? Right? Like my next novel was supposed to come out in May, and I'm completely jammed up in it. I keep deleting characters and adding new characters, uh, and yeah, it's just tough. Um, and I start getting really down on myself. I'm like, man, this is not professional. And then I fall into this trap where I'm like, well, someday I will be professional. And when I am professional, then I will be able to do all these things. And there's a fallacy to that. I know there's a fallacy to that because going full time just brings more work. Um, at the same time, so the answer, if I'm going to do some good CBT and I'm going to do some cognitive behavioral therapy on myself, and I'm going to catch that thought that like, should I even be doing this? Because I can't keep up with the professionalism of others. Um, I catch that thought and I go like, you know what? I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to do what I can every day, a little step at a time until I get to where I need to be. And it might take me a lot longer, but we're going to do it. I might have to work with a broken headphone. We're going to do it a step at a time until we can get to where we want to be. I may have to work in this crazy basement. Someday my kids are going to be back in school full time. And then maybe I can actually like make this less into like Legos and my kids' school calendar. And maybe I can make it into something that looks more professional. But for right now, this is what I got. So I got to come at it with what I can. Uh, so all that to say, moment of reflection. I just want to encourage you, right? If you can't get to the level in your mind that you feel like you should be at, do what you can. Do what you can, and that's enough. Do what you can, a little bit every day. It may take you longer to get where you want to go, like me, but the goal is just keep moving forward. Do what you can a little bit every day, and then we'll get there, right? We'll get there. Someday I will be able to post a novel to Kobo and not completely screw it up. Uh, I did go back and fix it, by the way, so it's not messed up anymore. But man, it was for the first couple of days. So do what you can, uh, and we'll all get there together, right? Like just keep moving forward. Okay, that's my moment of reflection. I hope that gives you some encouragement. If life is crazy, the like comparison game, it doesn't help, right? Looking at what other people do and like the mastery they have, don't let that discourage you. Let it inspire you, right? Make it something you can work for. Do what you can every day, moving toward that direction, and be inspired by those around you that are your peers. Be excited by what they're doing, and take it and be like, man, I would love to have a color-coded book case like Sasha Black in the Rebel Author podcast. But right now, I have my children behind me because I live in a small townhome with 5 kids. But someday, I will actually design this space to be something professional. So I'm going to do what I can until I can have that day. So yeah, do what you can till you get there, and allow it to inspire you, not discourage you. That's my reflection for this week. Okay, let's transition. Ooh, that was my transition noise. Uh, I'm never going to do that again. Okay, so today, again, solo episode, lots of Jeff today. Solo episode. Today, I want to talk about modulating voices. So, modulating voices. Let's start off with the why. Why are we why are we worried about modulating voices? And in the bigger picture of modulating voices, before we can talk about modulating voices, we have to talk about the emotional flow of your story and the emotional flow of each scene. So let's start there. What is the emotional flow of your story? And what do I mean by that? And to start with that question, let's start with the question of why do we engage in art at all? What is the purpose of art, right? Why do we walk through museums and look at paintings? Is it to admire the mastery of artists? I mean, on some level, yeah, but that's not what brought us in there, right? Like, yes, there is some admiring of the mastery of artists, but that's not why art is. That's kind of a byproduct of art. Why do we listen to music? Why do we read stories? Why do we watch TV? Why do we look at somebody and say like, hey, this was a great TV show? and we pass that TV show on, or, this was an amazing movie. I think my theory is the reason we do all these things, the reason we engage with art at all, is because it makes us feel something. Right. I love walking through. I live near DC and they're closed right now, but I love walking through the Smithsonian's. I really love the portrait gallery. And I like looking at the pictures, and I like looking at these amazing paintings and just standing in front of them for a minute and taking them in. And because it makes me feel something, right? There's an emotional connection to that art. That's why I share a TV show. This week I was talking to my wife about a movie that I had watched that I really loved. It was about, and I'm totally blanking on the name of it. Sorry, movie. It was about two kids that were both having kind of a Groundhog Day experience where they're like reliving the same day over and over again. It starts off with the boy having this experience, and then all of a sudden, the girl. He finds out that there's a girl in town that's also having that experience. And man, it was just a beautiful movie. I found it on Amazon Prime. I'll put the name in the show notes. Uh, and the reason I shared it with my wife, and I told my wife, like, hey, last night I watched this movie and you need to see it, was because of how the movie made me feel, right? I love watching Marvel movies with my kids because there's like some awe and amazement with those movies, right? Like we share them because how they make us feel. That's why we engage with art. We engage with art because of how it makes us feel, because of the emotional experience we have with the art. And your story is art. And the reason readers are engaging with your story is because how it makes them feel. Thriller readers like to feel that suspense, right? Mystery readers love the thrill of the puzzle, right? And I know I'm being like weirdly genreist. I don't know. I know I'm like throwing genres together, and that like there's a lot of things thriller readers read for, but you get the point, right? Like horror readers read to get that like fright moment, right? That scare moment, that feeling in your gut. Whenever I read Stephen King, there's always a part where I get this feeling I got where I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope that never happens to me, right? Because it's this like terror that like we're processing in the story. It's the emotional experience we're reading for. Great art gives us an emotional experience, and that's why our readers come into your story, right? They want that when they're reading that romance, they want that feeling of intimacy and connection and getting lost in a relationship, right? Like, so think about your story as an emotional experience that you're taking the reader through, and that emotional experience has an emotional flow, meaning there's a start to that emotional experience, there's an end to that emotional experience, and there's some kind of wave in the middle, right? There's some kind of emotional journey we're taking our reader on. There's an emotional flow to your story. I know I said this is about modulating voices. I promise I'm getting there, but it's going to be like 10 minutes. Yeah, so there's an emotional flow to your story. There's an experience you're taking the reader on. And just like genres have certain plot points, genres have certain emotional experiences that your reader's looking for. In fact, I would argue that the plot points are actually just tools to creating the emotional experience you want your readers to have, right? The plot points to a romance novel, that like those genre specific things every romance novel is supposed to have, those are the tools you're using to build this emotional experience. So, but the goal is an emotional connection with your reader, and your story is going to have this emotional flow from start to finish. And it looks like a wave in the middle where the emotions are going up and down. Your reader's having this emotional experience through. And the key is to get strategic with that emotional flow and strategic with those waves so that we know and we have planned, or we at least are editing to, if you're a pantser and you're not planning anything, you're editing to give your readers the emotional experience you want them to have. Now, I try to chart that emotional experience. And I actually got this idea watching years before I started doing the Dialogue Doctor years ago. I got this idea watching a talk by Kurt Vonnegut that's based on a thesis he wrote that was rejected by the University of Chicago. So Kurt Vonnegut was trying to get a degree in anthropology from the University of Chicago, and he wrote his master's thesis called The Shape of Story. And his theory was that we can learn about a culture by looking at the stories they told and the shape of those stories. And then he graphs the stories. On the y-axis, the axis up and down, he has kind of good fortune and bad fortune. And then on the x-axis, the axis that goes left to right, he has the course of the story. So when I think of emotional flow, I've stolen that, right? Because, you know, borrowed, I stole. So the I didn't steal, I borrowed and amended. The y-axis, I think of high and low emotional state, right? So high is at the top, low emotional state is at the bottom. And then in the x-axis, I think of like the actual beats of the story, the shape of the story. And Vonnegut talks about how there's all these different shapes to stories. I think he has 8 total. And there's like the man in the well starts high, and then the curve goes way down low to the bottom, and then at the end it curves out back high. So the man falls in the well and then gets out of the well, man in the well, right? Like where he talks about boy meets girl. Boy meets girl starts neutral, boy and girl get together, the line goes high, and then it goes all the way down to the bottom as they start experiencing relationship problems and things go bad, and then it swings back up at the end, right? He's got the creation myth story, which is this starts at the bottom where like everything's dark and sad and lonely, and then it stair steps all the way up to the end. And he talks in his thesis or in articles he wrote. I've actually never read the thesis. I've just read articles that were written about it and things written by him, and I've watched him talk about it. But how that creation myth isn't real popular in Western stories. The like everything just gets better until this jubilant climax at the end. We don't connect to those stories. And for him, that's the anthropology thing. For me, I'm less concerned about what stories we connect with and what stories we don't. Like throughout history, and I'm more concerned about right now writing stories that will engage readers emotionally. So, and planning using his shape of story method to understand the emotional flow of our story and what we want our readers to feel and how well we're doing that with each story is what I use this for. So we've got this graph. We've got the high and the low emotional state on the y-axis, and then the chapter beats or the story beats on the bottom axis. And we can chart out this flow, right, of our emotional story. Maybe everything starts high and everybody's happy at the beginning of the story. And then when we get to the inciting incident, there's trouble, right? There's sadness and things start to get a little bit sad. And then as the character makes decisions, things get sadder, but then the character feels like something's going to get a little bit better. So we come up a little bit, but then we go down again because it's really bad, but then we end in hope. So it comes up at the end, it swings up at the end. And I will say that I know specifically in Western stories, you always end happy. That was something I went to seminary and my preaching teacher was like, hey, always end in joy, because for Americans anyway, we don't like stories that end sad. So always end in joy. So all that to say, we hate tragedies. Like, oh, this is the most depressing thing ever. I'm never reading it again. Schindler's List is a great example of that. That story starts high and then it just keeps getting worse. And even at the end, when you think it's about to come up because he saved all these people, he's like yelling about how his watch could saved a couple more. And you're just like, oh, this is the worst feeling ever. And the big joke amongst my friends, and I'm sure it is amongst everyone that's seen, is like, I'm only watching it once. Because I don't want to feel that way again, right? So being aware of how our story makes people feel and how it will decide whether or not people come back to our story or not. So we want to plot out our story on this emotional flow chart, right? To kind of figure out where our story is. And it's not a technical thing. It's not like you're not giving your story numbers or anything, right? Like this is just a relative thing. You're just kind of thinking through like, okay, it's going to start kind of positive and then it's going to go kind of lower and then lower. And then we're going to hit this bottom point and then I'm going to end sad, right? Like it's a tragedy. So it's got a downward arc, or maybe it's got an upward arc, right? Like it's a kind of like joyful coming of age story where you start low and then you just start to build all the way up to the top until finally it's great, right? Like, so you're going to lay out in your mind. And again, I'm not giving anything numbers. This is all about, we're talking about feelings, people. There's no science going on here. We're talking about feelings. So just feel it out, chart it out. And in the newsletter this week, I'll give you some examples of emotional flow charts that I've used so you can kind of get a feeling for how it looks. Now that's the big piece, right? The emotional flow chart on the big thing is looking at your whole story. But a story is just a composition of scenes, right? A collection of scenes. A story is just a collection of scenes put together makes a story. Ideally, they have some kind of pattern or journey you're taking the reader on, and they're not just like random stories put together. That's more an anthology or a short story collection. But yeah, a story is a collection of scenes. So once we get the feel for the big emotional state of our story, we then want to look at each scene and be like, where does this play in the big emotional arc? And is the emotional feeling right for this story? So, why this is important. Before, one of the reasons I started thinking about this and I started doing this is because one of the first books I wrote, I had this scene that was coming. I was writing to the Save the Cat model, which has all the beats kind of laid out for you. And I was writing to the All is Lost. And I kept telling jokes during the All is Lost moment. And Laura, who is doing this with me, this was like 6 years ago when I first started writing, she was like, yeah, no jokes in this moment. And I was like, why no jokes? And she was like, because this is supposed to be sad. I was like, oh, and it occurred to me like, oh crap, my story has an emotional flow and this is at a low point, but my scene has a very high emotional tone. If I were to chart out my scene, the scene is not matching up with where the emotional flow of the story is. And when the scenes don't match with what you want the emotional flow of the story to be, the story is going to feel emotionally schizophrenic, and readers aren't going to be able to ground themselves to it. They're not going to understand the emotional journey they're on, and they're going to put the book down. If they don't understand the emotional journey they're on, they put the book down, right? And that's the last thing we want as an author. The last thing we want is them putting the book down, right? They have to keep reading. They have to go all the way to the end because there's too many stupid games on their phone and there's too much stuff to watch on Netflix. So if they put the book down, they may not pick it up again, right? So we got to keep them while we got them. If they've picked up the books, we got to keep them while we got them. So keep them engaged. And one of the things that will cause them to put your book down is not understanding, feeling out of sync with the emotional flow of your story. So as you're charting your scene, right, like think about where it falls in the bigger picture and how the emotional flow of this scene is adding to and not detracting from the emotional flow of the overall story. Okay, so I do it first for the overall story, just to recap. First, I chart the emotional flow of the overall story, and then I chart the emotional flow of the overall scene. And once I know what I want from the scene, and once I know what I want from the story, I can then go to town and start using the tools that I have in order to create that emotional flow. So let's put two things together that we've talked a lot about on the podcast. The first thing is character voices. And if you've been listening for a while, you've probably heard me say, readers engage with your dialogue. Readers engage with your character voices, right? This is what it means. I mean, this isn't what it means to be human, but this is an aspect of humanity, is that we are verbal creatures that engage with one another through communication. That communication can come through body language. It can come through vocalization. It can come through sign language, right? Like whatever language you're speaking, we engage with each other through communication. So your readers, because they engage with people through communication, are going to engage with your characters through their dialogue, through what they're reading on the page the character says. Plot is great. Prose can be artful and wonderful. But where your readers are going to connect with your story is in your character's dialogue, which includes what your characters say or think And like if they're thinking it out loud, if you're writing in first person POV or you're giving their thoughts, I've talked about that before. It's kind of a half zoom. Zooming out is prose, zooming in is dialogue, inner thoughts is kind of a half zoom. Keep listening. You'll hear me talk to an author about that at some point, because I feel like I do it all the time. So things that are said to one another, thoughts that are happening, and body language. Those three aspects of communication are where your reader engages with your characters. And that's what your readers love about your book, right? Like that's what brings your readers into the book, is this engagement with these characters, finding themselves in a character, sharing an experience with a character, right? So we know that what a reader is latching onto, right? Like if our story is a wall, a climbing wall that a reader is climbing, those handholds are moments with our characters that they're grabbing onto as they climb up the wall of our story, right? Now, what keeps them climbing up the wall, we've just said, is the emotional experience or the emotional journey they're on. So they're engaging with their characters, and what keeps them engaged and what keeps them moving is this emotional flow. So if we put these two things together, the primary way to construct your emotional flow, to manipulate the emotions your reader is feeling, is by modulating your character's voice, by displaying the emotional state of your character through their voice, meaning inner thoughts, the words they say, and the action. Let me say that again, because I know I just said a ton. Let me say that again. If you want your readers to feel something in your story, they are connecting to your story through your characters and through what your character's saying. So if you want your reader to feel something, you have to change how your characters are speaking in order to demonstrate the emotional experience your characters are having. You need to get your reader to latch on to the emotional experience your characters are having, because your reader is connecting to your story through your character's voices, right? Connecting to your story through what your character says, what your character thinks, and your character's body language. Connecting to your story that way. The interplay between your characters is where all the energy of the story is coming from, right? And your readers are staying engaged because they're invested in the emotional story of your book. The emotional flow of your book is what keeping them invested. That's the journey they're on. They're on an emotional journey, right? So if we want to strategically manipulate the emotional journey, we need to strategically manipulate our characters' voices. The voices need to change as the character's emotional state changes to express to our reader there's a different emotional feel here. All right. I know that's a ton. And I know some of you are like, what is he talking about? So let me give you some examples, real life examples first, and then we'll move into literature. When I am talking to my kids about their day, and we're all like in the kitchen, right? This happens a lot in my house. The teenagers and I are in the kitchen, and my wife is there, and we're all just processing what happened during the day. We're telling funny stories. We're having a good time. Everybody's laughing. Body language is usually relaxed. I like to sit on the counter. I don't know why, but I like to pop myself up on the counter and sit on the counter. My wife loves to laugh. She's open. We're asking questions, right? Like I ask a lot of questions. How was your day? What happened today? Did you have any good conversations? Did you talk to anybody fun? Right? Like my kids are telling stories, and they're usually kind of setting up a punchline with the stories because they like to make us laugh. So that's one emotional state I'm in, right? It's a state of camaraderie. It's a state of connection. It's a state of friendship, right? Like this place where I'm connecting with my kids and my wife and my family, and we're having a good time, and we're all prepared to laugh, and our body language is set one way and the tone of our voice is one way. Now, whole different circumstance, right? When my kids have done something wrong and I have to correct them, we're usually seated. We're typically at the kitchen table. The tone of my voice is more measured, right? I bring it down, and I'm more strategic with what I say. Often I'm asking less questions, and I'm giving more sentences and more things for them to think about. I usually start with questions, and then it goes to like, okay, so let's talk about what you just did, and let's talk about how that impacted the family, right? I'm modulating my voice between those two instances. I'm not sitting on the counter. I'm not asking questions. I'm not ready to laugh. right? When I'm being serious. Because when my emotional state changes, that is displayed through my voice and my body language. In the same way, when your character's emotional state changes, it should be displayed through their voice and through their body language. Now, my favorite, if I'm going to talk about this in a movie, because we're moving toward art, my favorite movie to talk about this in is the very first Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie, because it's such a perfect like emotional flow. It's so clear. And I'm talking just about the opening scene where they're on a mission. And the opening scene starts, Tom Cruise is in a costume and he walks into this big ball. And his character's always serious, but when he walks into the ball, he feels in control. Right. So he's talking to people through his headset. He's checking on what's going on and he's being a little snarky and he's got some kind of jokes. But all in all, he's all serious and he's all business. Right. Then he gets into an elevator and some things start to go wrong. And when some things start to go wrong, the jokes increase. And the jokes increasing raises the tension a little bit. He's still talking, he's still communicating through his earpiece, but it raises the tension a little bit. Then, as he starts to leave, he feels like he's won at first. So he goes back to a more relaxed and calm tone, still in control, still talking to his teammates through his microphone, but he's a little bit more relaxed. But then things start to go wrong and teammates start to die. And as that happens, you watch him lose control of his own voice, so that at first he's kind of barking commands, and then he's kind of barking half sentences, and then he's just gutturally screaming people's names. And then he runs to a payphone and he picks it up and he calls his boss. And while he's on the phone with his boss, he has this, like, at first, a little bit incoherent conversation. But as he starts to gain control, he comes back to the voice that he had in the elevator when things were wrong. And he starts making threats and jokes again. They're sharp jokes with a point. Right? So what we see in his emotional arc is him starting high, him going low, him coming high again, and then hitting rock bottom as people start to die and completely losing control of his voice. And then in the end, starting to come back up to give us a little bit of hope that the movie is actually going somewhere and we're not going to end in despair and sadness. Right? Beautiful emotional flow to a scene. Totally sells it. And it comes completely through the voice, like what's happening in his voice. That communicates the emotions of the scene, what's happening in his voice. Right. We can do that in our work as well. If you want another example of this, go back to the episode where we did the book club episode on Beloved with Toni Morrison. Because one of the things I talk about in the book club is one of the opening scenes where Paul D and Sethi are in the room together and their voices are one way when they're talking about the present. And then their voices become a little less clear when they're reminiscing about the past of their slavery. Right? But then there comes this intimate moment where Sethi actually takes the back of her dress down to show Paul D her tree, which is where she's been where she's been beat. And Paul D comes over and touches her back. And their voices modulate even more because now they're in this vulnerable state. And then the ghost of the house gets really angry and starts shaking the house. And they're yelling, and Paul D is making demands and he's commanding, right? And the voice changes again. And it takes us on this emotional journey from reminiscing to pain to vulnerability to terror. Right? Like, and it's all done with characters in a room and the transition in their voices, the modulation of their voices. Right? So let's start to put all this together. We want our reader to have an emotional experience. We want to take them on an emotional journey. We want our story to have an emotional flow, which means our scenes need to have an emotional flow and need to be appropriate parts of the journey, right? The scene needs to match where it is in the journey. And the way that we strategically communicate to our reader the emotional journey we want them having is by modulating our characters' voices, meaning we change how they talk, we change their body language, and we even change the sound of their inner thoughts a little bit. And that's what it means to modulate a voice. So now the question is, how do we do that? And I'm just going to give a snippet here, and then I'll come back in another episode and talk more about it, because I feel like I've been talking for a long time. So we'll have a part 2 to this. It starts with planning it, right? So I've talked about the dialogue daisy and how your character's voice isn't the character's personality, but it's actually this blossom that comes out of the personality. And the center of that blossom, like the center of the daisy, is what we call your character's baseline voice. So this is the root voice. This is who your character is, right? Like my voice always sounds like my voice, right? Like I've got a leftover Southern accent from growing up in Louisiana and coming from a Texas family and going to college in Texas. That accent is always going to be part of me. It's never going anywhere, right? Like I am consistently self-deprecating no matter what mood I'm in, right? Like I'm constantly self-deprecating regardless of my emotional state. I'm always self-deprecating because it's just part of my voice, right? It's part of who I am. So there are things about the voice that always stay the same. As emotional circumstances happen, which we say are the petals of the dialogue daisy, as emotional things happen, our voice is expressed into these petals, which means aspects of our voice are expressed and aspects of our voice are suppressed, right? So if we're always apologetic, when we're anxious, we may become more apologetic. But when we're vulnerable and we're in a moment of safety, we might become less apologetic. It becomes a little bit more suppressed, and something else about us might be more expressed, right? So that's what it means to modulate a voice. It doesn't mean changing the voice completely. It means emphasizing aspects of the voice that meet that emotional moment and then de-emphasizing aspects of the voice that don't. And then when we change to a different emotional moment, emphasizing aspects of the voice there and de-emphasizing aspects of the voice there, right? So as you think about how you modulate your voice, think about the different emotional circumstances you're going to put your character in, the different places your character is going to be, and how your character's voice is going to change in those places to become uh, more an aspect of what it originally is, right? So we're modulating the voice based on the circumstances, and we're not writing a whole new voice, right? We're suppressing some aspects of the voice and expressing other aspects of the voice to communicate the state of emotion has changed, modulating the voice in and out. So the first thing we can do to prep to do that is to plan those modulations. What's going to happen? On dialoguedoctor.com, I've got a thing called a character wheel chart. That's what I use to plan my modulations. And across the top, I just think through like, okay, so when I'm writing this story, these are kind of the emotional instances I'm going to have. And then here's a column for the baseline voice. So here's the baseline voice. I'm going to line that up. And then I'm going to write the emotional circumstances or the situations, or like when I'm with different types of people, I'll modulate my voice, because really being with a different type of person, like, so let's say I'm talking to a cop who's pulled me over, I'm going to sound different than when I'm talking to my wife. Now, the truth is, the reason I sound different with a cop that's pulled me over than with my wife is because I'm having a different emotional experience at that moment. So my voice sounds different, right? So anyway, whether you want to label it like circumstances they're in or emotional state that they're having, whatever you want to say, you kind of think those through, right? Like after you've plotted the emotional flow of your story on the emotional flow graph, you think like, okay, here are the kind of emotional states I can see that my character is going to go through. And then just think through those modulations, so that when you're writing a scene and your character feels terror, you're prepared for how that character is going to sound when they're terrified, right? Because here's the thing, not everybody sounds, not everyone responds to emotional states in the same way, right? So let's take my wife and I. We both have very different voices. We're very different people. right? When we're challenged, like when someone challenges us, I tend to become anxious. And when I'm challenged, the aspect of my voice, the strategic thinker and logistician that I tend to be internally, gets expressed. And when I'm challenged, I start thinking strategically about what's going on. And you can hear it in my voice because I'm leveling off points and I'm trying to solve problems and I'm trying to like fix stuff. Right. My wife, on the other hand, when she's challenged, she has real passion in her voice. And when she's challenged, the anger side of that passion gets expressed. She talks a lot about her gut, how frustrated she is. Right. Like, so we respond differently. So it's important that you think through your character. You think through, like, with each character, how are they going to sound in this moment of terror? Or how are they going to sound in this moment of joy? Or how are they going to sound in this moment of excitement? Right? Like, what about their voice is going to be expressed? And what about their voice is going to be suppressed? How do they sound in these moments? So the after we've applied the emotional flow, we think about our character wheel. We think about how the character is going to respond in these different moments. And then when we write our scene, we're thinking about the emotional flow of our scene. I try to think about, like, okay, how is the voice going to change? Is it a sudden change? If it's a jump scare, it's going to be a sudden change. If I'm writing an action scene and my character suddenly finds themselves in the heat of battle, right, their voice is going to change suddenly to communicate to the reader the emotional state is changing right now, right? It's happening right now. You need to feel this change. It hurts. It's intense. Right now it's happening, right? Or is it a slow flow, right? Like, so if your character's in interrogation, as a mystery writer, I write a bunch of interrogations. If your character's in an interrogation, right, those usually start off with people in certain emotional states. And then as they progress, they become more intense. Right. Like, so, or if they're failures of interrogation, they become more comic. Either way, there's a slow build. So how are you going to slow modulate? So I think through the emotional states. I think through my story, because I've plotted the emotional flow of my story. I think through my story. I get my emotional states across the top of my character wheel. I lay out how the voice is going to modulate. Then I think about my scene. I give the emotional flow of my scene. And I think right before I write it, like, okay, how am I going to go about modulating this voice? Is it quick or is it slow? Do I need to build to it or do I not? Right? This is really helpful when you're editing. A lot of times I'll just get it in my head and then I'll write it and I won't worry about it. I'll just write what naturally comes out. But when I'm editing, I come back and I'll go, like, okay, how did I do? How did I do matching the emotional state that I need in this piece? Can I feel it from the changes in my character's voice? Okay, I'm going to stop there. If you have questions, email me or hit me up at dialoguedoctor.com. Shoot me questions, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can ask me in the YouTube comments. So hit me up with questions. We'll do another one of these in a couple weeks where I talk more about it. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. I know that was a lot, and I know several of you have never thought about emotional states before, because I talk to authors all the time who don't think about it. So I know this may be a lot for you to kind of handle, for you to take in, and I'm fully open to questions, fully open to pushback. Yeah, whatever you want to throw at me. Let's talk about it more so that we can build more engaging stories. That's really my hope for you, is that we can build more engaging stories. Uh, all right, I'm going to end the recording and sign this off. See, Laura, I talk about it in the recording even when it's just me. Uh, and I will thank you for signing on today and listening to me ramble. And we'll be back next week with an interview from an author.